Director's cut of.
Amazing. Warren Beatty, Annette Bening, take a punch. Nominated for 10 Oscars. Bugsy.
An hour baloney.
Being a real bad precedent for handling future cases?
Frankly, probably nothing. What it presented was an opportunity to deal with the same zoning and land use planning issues you always deal with and be efficient.
Absolutely.
Pure and simple.
Absolutely, and I understand
If you say
that.
to me, what's our goal is to develop the land over here in residential.
Right.
You know, if the other doesn't happen, it doesn't happen. There is no contingency on Plan B. It's Plan B, and we have to deal with the major issues of Rockport Tap and so forth and so on.
Right.
So really,
But it is
none.
possible that at least the common issues, the issues that are common to both plans, would be resolved in the course of deciding what to do with Plan B. I mean, typically the way these
yeah.
would come to us is a
Yes.
Plan B would be floated, we would hash out all the issues that were common, we would, let's say for sake of argument, approve Plan B, and then a developer would come in and say, at some later time, oh, now that you've approved that and settled all those issues, I now have new information, I can acquire this adjacent land, I can make this deal even better by swapping the two pieces.
We do not mean to cause any form of procedural disruption
Yeah.
or herniation of the system here. If what we want is Plan B,
Right.
okay? If it's the will of this commission that you don't want to deal with A unless it is a reality in terms of agreement with the country club and so forth, so be it. What we want at least is a fair hearing on Plan B, and we were doing it for efficiency purpose, and it seemed like a good idea at the time.
I very much appreciate your candor
Okay.
on that. Thank you.
Well, I think one of the things, excuse me for jumping in here, but one of the things that in Joe's conversation that comes up is when the adjoining property owner gets to be part of it, they want it to happen, okay? Now we have a situation where we don't know if they want it to happen. And that's where, and excuse me for jumping in here, but that's where the rub is. I mean, we have a number of people that are concerned about one plan more than other, this plan versus the other one. So, I need to hear a little bit more about why we want to sit through all this and then find out that, and put all the neighbors to it, and then find out that, well, that one didn't work out because the adjoining property owner that we thought was going to go along doesn't want to go along, and then it's like, well, we put everybody through, you know how it works, we put everybody through the ringer, and we didn't have to. So,
Well, including the petitioner. At the time we started.
Absolutely.
I want to make it clear to you,
It's becoming more clear.
this was not a controversial thing. It was not something, designed to do this. And as it developed, various interests at the country club said, we hate it, we don't want it, and so forth, and we hadn't yet, they thought the board had done it and all these kinds of things, and in our mind, they haven't done anything of the kind. It's yet to be done.
Yes.
So, we understand where you are, and,
Okay. Hang on.
okay.
Doug? And then I'll come back.
Yeah, I've got a question on clarification. It almost seems like there's maybe 3 groups instead of 2. Does Quail Ridge, is that run by the country club, or is that a separate entity itself? Because it seems like
It
we've
is.
got a Quail Ridge group
Sure.
that has, it doesn't matter what the country club wants to do.
Sure.
They're
There are, I think you've got it correctly. There are at least three interested groups. There are probably many interested individuals, but the 3 groups, of course, the developer, the country club with regard to the golf course, and then Quail Ridge, well, they're certainly able to address this themselves, is right here. And they have an immediate impact and have been vocal about their position for quite some time, and what do you do to mitigate it and so forth. So there are 3 interest groups, I'd say, at least distinctly. And I think Mr. Jones is here on their behalf this evening.
Okay, so even if the country club said, yeah, we'll swap,
Yeah,
then
they
all of
might-
a sudden Quail Ridge they're no longer on a golf
They're
course.
no longer- exactly.
Okay.
They're no longer an island in a golf course. They're an island in another development with other housing
Gotcha.
opportunities around them.
Okay, thank you.
I'm sorry, you
No,
done?
I'm done.
Yes, Lorraine.
So it's my understanding, Glenn, that you're asking to rezone somebody else's property without their permission, is that?
No, they didn't say that. They gave us permission to proceed. The board did. I think that's on file.
The board did?
Yeah. No, we've been doing this a while, and Mr. Smith and Mr. Probst.
Staff would not have been able to accept the petition and put it before you without the authorization of the owner of all the land. So
But
we
in-
have that.
But let me make it clear, in no way, in doing that, did they made it very clear they weren't agreeing to anything. They wanted to know if this would fly. That was one thought. You know, will the city do this? I mean, it's a chicken and the egg problem. You're saying, well, tell me if they'll do it before we approve it. And they're saying, well, let's see if they approve it before we do it. You're kind of in the driver's seat on that issue. And always have been.
Very
Okay.
strange.
Well, it may end up strange, but you understand how we got here? And
Getting
something
there.
changed along the way, so.
Yeah,
And we
Yeah,
want to go
and you're-
forward with a hearing
sure,
on something.
we're going to.
Gotcha.
Any other questions for the petitioner? Thank you.
Thank you.
Now, is there someone from, it sounded like maybe there was a representative of neighborhood group to speak? Yes, sir, please. This is they took 4 minutes and the rest was all our questions. We don't count questions as on the clock type things, so.
Thank you. I'm R.D. Jones, local attorney, and I'm here on behalf of the Quail Ridge Condo Association. These are the 20 units of condos that exist already there inside the club property, you might say. And also I speak on behalf of some individual members of the country club, including myself, who's a member. I do not speak on behalf of the country club itself. First, let me point out that we are not opposed to Plan B. And I say that by way of explaining our position. We, of course, are opposed to Plan A. And we believe that it would be setting a dangerous precedent if you proceeded on both of these at the same time. I know of no reason, and I've heard no valid reason, why the petitioner does not go to the club and ask for their consent and endorsement of this idea. They do not have the consent and endorsement of the country club at this point. I have talked to the president of the board, and what they have stated to the petitioner is that they will not file any objections to the petitioner attempting to proceed with these two plans. Probably, to best answer your question, as you might have the question as to why would the club take this position, you have to remember that this is basically a golf club. Virtually all the members of the club are golfers. And as such, there's probably little or no likelihood that 300 golfing members, would approve a plan to trade the existing front 9 holes or 7 holes for a new 7 without that new 7 being built so they can see it first. Well, that being the case, it's going to be incumbent upon this petitioner to build those 7 or 9 holes if he probably wants to trade, and I'm speaking now strictly from my own point of view, if he expects to have any hope of getting the country club to approve it, the membership. That is probably why he has couched this thing in terms of Plan A and Plan B. He could go and attempt to receive the club's endorsement of this whole plan now, and I assure you, having been past president for 2 years of the country club and being a member for over 20 years and active in its affairs, it would not take very long for the membership to vote on it at the country club. A special meeting could be called at any time for that purpose. So it is our position that the petitioner should go to the club, get the agreement with the club if the club wants to agree with them. Once the agreement has been made, if one has been obtained, then come back to you if he wants to go that route. Otherwise, we have no objections to your proceeding on Plan B, and we have no objections to Plan B.
Okay.
I have an answer.
You have a minute left. Would you,
I
okay.
can take care of the problem.
No one hollers at me, I'll let you speak.
We would agree with Mr. Jones, frankly. We didn't anticipate this kind of a problem with everybody when it all started. And if it's this big of issue, we will withdraw Plan A from consideration to allow an opportunity for these folks to review it and give input on it. We thought that was different than what it is, but it's not what we thought it was now, so it's time to move on down the road.
Okay.
And I have executed a little document, PUD 52-95. We would withdraw Plan A from consideration to allow the country club greater input. And so we'll do that and solve this problem, if I may, because I agree with Mr. Jones.
Okay. Okay. Now what do we do? Joe?
Well, I was prepared, since the presentation is now over, I was prepared to make a motion to that effect. I appreciate Mr. Coyne, again, stepping forward and doing what I would have moved to do anyway. I suppose, in light of this, there's no need. It's now there is now an amendment, to the petitioner's plan. I just so that we make it nice and clean and neat, since we typically would have some question about floor amendments as substantial as this one, I'm going to go ahead and make a motion to exactly the same effect, so that it also comes from us.
Okay.
And I will now move that we sever these two plans and treat PUD 5295 as at the petitioner's request as only consisting of Plan B tonight.
Second. We have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion?
Staff need a little time to
I've already asked that.
reconsider.
They're prepared to go ahead by talking about Plan B tonight.
We were prepared to go ahead with both of them, certainly prepared to go ahead with one of them.
All righty. Okay. With that, I believe, Lorraine, did you? Tom, sorry, Tom. Does everyone understand the motion? No, we'll be hearing Plan B only.
Plan A is no longer part of this proposal.
The petitioner has withdrawn it, and our motion is supporting that and stating that we will be hearing Plan B. D, the roll, please.
Yes.
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 Yes. Yes.
Okay. Thank you. We appreciate your cooperation with this. So with that, Tim, will you continue with Plan B?
Okay. Pick up where we left off. This is the existing zoning map. We have Tap Road here at the top of the exhibit, becoming Country Club as you go east. Rockport Road going south with its curve. Fullerton Pike along the south edge of the project. As you know, Fullerton Pike until recently was developed only far enough to serve the driveway for bachelor school in this location right here. But with the recent approvals of additional development down in this area, Mr. Moore is already responsible as the developer of the parcels to the south to extend Fullerton Pike to the west limit of his property. That responsibility could now be shared with this project if approved. There's an old right-of-way and probably a dirt road through here out to Rockport, but there's a bridge that's not passable and it's not really open as a road. The county has long-range plans to someday reopen Fullerton Pike for local traffic. To the east, the site abuts the new developments, the country club. To the north, it abuts a piece of the Woolery PUD. If you recall, the Woolery PUD was predominantly residential across the street, but there was a business park component in this immediate area. The argument for the Woolery Business Park component was that it had immediate proximity to some rather rough quarries, and they felt that the business park would make a better neighbor to the quarries than would residential with children. Over here on the west-hand side of the site, we have the west fork of Clear Creek, which includes some of the site in its floodplain. Zoning is along this line that you see right here, coming from the corner of the country club property and then going south and west, we have RS 3.5 and PRO 6 zoning. The rationale for that zoning was fairly clear-cut. It was supported by the growth policies plan, and we looked for a natural divide. This is higher land. The hill drops off into lower land in that location. We also sort of drew a line between developments that were approved down here for urban densities and the country club area, and filled in the gap. That was our rationale for coming up with this RS 3.5 PR06 zoning. We did the same thing up here, so there's a little triangle of RS 3.5 PR06 zoning here. The balance of this was zone quarry. When we went into our policies plan and our zoning transactions, we simply retained the existing quarry zoning. We had no idea that anyone had development aspirations, and as we did with much other quarry land, we left it quarry. In the growth policies plan, let's take a quick look at this, and I'll also refer you to the sub-area exhibit that was included in the packet. I think we need to get a new one of these as we continue with these hearings. We're really wrecking this one. The property is located right in, let's see, having a little trouble finding it.
It's crosshatched with green and gray.
Straight down from your pen.
Yeah, just
There we go.
no, a little bit further west.
There,
Right there.
Yeah, this must be Rockport Road.
Yep.
Right here.
Yep.
Tap Road. And you can see the growth policies plan pretty well reflects the same rationale we used for zoning. We had existing development area down there. We had some grade change. We just went from the corner of the country club and filled in this area with PR06 kind of, or 6 unit per acre low density residential. The concept was that it's part of that corridor served by the trio of roads, Rogers Street, South Walnut Street, and Walnut Street Pike, where we afforded a bit of a corridor-like extension of urban density down into the rural area. Here on Rogers, we have some PUD residential recommended up on Tap Road, and in the area south of that, the plan suggests that the quarries and the natural areas would make a good regional park. And the text of the plan suggests that, but it isn't really suggested in the context of the city ought to go out and develop a quarry park. It's more or less a concept that might make a nice state park or something like that. So it was identified as an opportunity, but I don't think anyone in the process, certainly not the staff, and we don't believe the commission, intended this plan recommendation or the subsequent quarry zoning to be in place for the purpose of preserving land for future park acquisition or for preserving land for mineral exaction. I think we were matching the zoning to the previous zoning and to what we saw as an appropriate land use concept. In other cases, we are prepared to generally afford some kind of development opportunity if somebody doesn't want to quarry their land. So the key issue in plan compliance here, as we see it, is one of land use intensity, not whether or not we should change from the quarry. Should it be the low-density residential that prevails in much of the area around there, or would it be more appropriate to view it as having more in common with the compact urban form and the traffic or the leverage of public capital aspects that pertain to Tap Road's priority as a thoroughfare? In that way, it's not at all unlike what we did on the Wiley Farm out here when we decided to deviate from the master plan's recommendation for land bank and go with zoning. We figured that it should be urban density kind of zoning, not the low intensity zoning, because it's on a thoroughfare, because it's already in an area that's heavily impacted with industry and airport. So our view of plan compliance down here is very much the same, that we think that if we make the decision to make a transition from quarrying to some form of land use, that something a little more urban in nature is somewhat more consistent with the plan than insisting it stay low intensity. Now, the one fly in that ointment is really the plan's aspect on Rockport Road. Tap Road is clearly viewed as one of the public capital investments in the future that's going to warrant development. It was treated that way in the plan. Other roads, there are a lot of them around the perimeter of the city, are treated as areas where we want to deter trip making so that we can not have to follow it with public investment that we didn't contemplate in city or county long-range plans. And Rockport Road is one of those kinds of roads. So that's why that area detail talks about trying to have the development that we target here access Tap Road only and discourage new access to Rockport Road. So that's really one of the key issues in the staff's mind, is how do we deal with Rockport Road traffic? Now the plan itself. Since the golf course is no longer part of this, we scrapped Plan A. Plan B, as I mentioned, is split by Rockport Road. Floodplain is over in this area. If you recall, in the earlier plan, the proposal was to use the floodplain for open space uses such as driving range or par 3 golf. That portion of the plan has been withdrawn, and the proposal is simply to leave the floodplain in its natural open state. In addition, there is some open space in the area that has the most severe quarry impact. This open space has been somewhat reduced in size from the first hearing, and the area that you see right here within the curve of Rockport Road on the east side of Rockport, this is an area that's designated business park that has been expanded somewhat into the quarry area. And I imagine the rationale there is that a use like that can make use of the landforms and fit the shape and style of building and the arrangement of parking around whatever physical impediments exist on that part of the site. We have a mix of residential types, and I think rather than me go through the litany of what those various components are, I'm going to leave that to the petitioner, so you don't have to hear it twice. He's probably better equipped with fancier transparencies to do that. Another issue that has changed a little bit since the preliminary plan is the treatment of roads. I don't think this transparency is the most up-to-date version that we have in our files. The Adams Street extension in the Woolery property is contemplated to come in this approximate location, having a 4-way intersection with Tapp and proceeding on up through the Woolery and Sudbury properties to eventually come out on Allen Street. Now what they're saying should be done is when the two developments come together, this should be the continuous roadway and this should be curved into it to eliminate some of the adverse geometry on Rockport and create a somewhat safer 3-way intersection, and also to encourage more of the traffic to utilize the better intersection that's being contemplated here at Tapp Road and Adams instead of the poor intersection here. The big problem, as you know, is there's a crest just west of the intersection, and cars coming east on Tapp Road have very little visibility of the corner before they get there. There are probably a lot of things that can be done to mitigate that as warrants develop, as traffic picks up, flasher lights, warnings, signals, various kinds of things, but right now it's one of the deficiencies. I'm also going to leave it to the petitioner to detail their traffic proposal. But from the very start in this transaction, staff expressed traffic on Rockport as our #1 concern with this proposal and with the intensity of land use being proposed, and to a lesser extent the traffic that would be dumped on Fullerton and Rogers. And the petitioner's response to this ultimately was to come up with a schedule of development that phases things according to the progress being made on intersections. Again, they'll go through the specific details and numbers, but the idea is only a limited amount of development in the Fullerton Bachelor School area would take place prior to improvements at the intersection of Rogers and Fullerton. Then more development would take place. Development accessing Rogers over in this area of the development wouldn't take place until either this link were available or this intersection had been improved. And until that time, those phases could not commence. The initial proposal made no mention of developer responsibility, so staff indicated a reluctance to support that concept, whereupon they clarified their position with a recent letter to the effect that if these improvements are performed by others or the public sector, fine. If not, the development will not proceed unless it's performed by the developer. And we think that adds a little bit to the equation in terms of their proposal to take that responsibility on themselves. Now, in our staff report, we said this is a pretty serious issue that warrants some consideration. We've done this to a lesser extent in a number of developments. I recall Hyde Park, when it started, had phase one down on Sayre Road. And we put a condition on there that when a certain level of service was reached at the corner of Winston and Sayre Road, the developer would be responsible for the connection out to Moores Pike. We never had to call that condition because it proceeded and worked itself out. We did something similar on the Sudbury property because its only initial access was from a single drive to Weimer, although there are all kinds of streets to be stubbed into the Sudbury property for others. But this is certainly the most extensive use we've made of this concept of saying that the development is being approved predicated on off-site improvements to be made presumably by the public sector, and that development of portions of the site will not proceed until those improvements are in place. It helps that the developer is willing to say that if they're not made by the public, that he would do it before undertaking the development. But nevertheless, I think we want to go through this with open eyes, no blinders, to the effect that this is going to be a somewhat difficult to administer condition of approval. We foresee that Tap Road is probably going to fall backward in time on schedule. The county had talked about improving Tap in the 2002-2003 general area 5 or 6 years from now. And generally, as inflation increases the costs of projects, as competing demands maneuver with one another, it's been our experience that things happen usually later, not sooner. We also have a lot of uncertainty about the level of federal funding, and we even have uncertainty about who's going to have the jurisdiction. Right now, this is a county road. If we annex this area, it becomes a city street, and the city has a different set of priorities than the county. Tap Road may be a fairly high priority for the county, but may have to take a back seat to some other important streets if it becomes part of the city. So my point is, there's a great deal of uncertainty about when Tap Road is going to be improved. And it could be a lot further down the pike than the early part of the next century that's been talked about. Now, what happens if we get to the point where they build out the phases that they can, and now there's vacant land here, and perhaps we're not even dealing with the same developer, his successor. And let's say that successor is not happy with that condition of approval and says, well, you know, you haven't built the road, and I can't afford it, and I would like to develop my land. Now, that's the downside that we have to be prepared to go forward and accept, and it's a difficult one, and I think the staff's support for this is not wholehearted. We think that it's a tough proposition. We think it can be done, and we didn't want to stand in the way of this project at the staff level, but I think we are saying that it has its risks, and it places a lot of burden on both the property owner and the public sector to stand by the arrangement. And if we go forward with that, with an awareness of that risk, so be it. We do want to have a thorough airing of the issue, though. So with that said, why don't I recite the conditions of approval that we have, and maybe just mention a little bit about the overall. There's a total of 1,165 units scattered through the site. The overall gross density is 4.9 units per acre. The plan encompasses 202 acres. Some of the land in the plan is designated for non-residential uses. We've already mentioned Area I, 19 acres of business park, and there's a shopping area, which is referred to as J, Commercial Center, also on Rockport right at its curve. which is 6 acres. Now, in terms of our conditions, first condition is delete Area J, the commercial center. We've dabbled in commercial centers in a number of centrally located parts of subdivisions in recent months, but in this case, with the traffic concerns we've identified and some of the uncertainties that are pertinent to that, if we do decide to go forward with this, staff, and the county staff, by the way, agrees pretty strongly with us on this, we would not like to exacerbate that situation by adding commercial with its potential high trip generation characteristics to this mix. We'll make the observation that we're on the outer edge of the urban area. You know, for all practical purposes, this is probably the edge. So we're not in a centrally located place where we're going to intercept a lot of traffic that might otherwise be going to bigger shopping centers. When we look at a bigger neighborhood, for example, the commercial center on the Sudbury site, that's in the middle of an area that's going to accommodate literally thousands of dwelling units. There's almost 1,000 in the Sudbury, another 1,000 in the Woolery, and a lot of developments to take place up on Allen Street between the two. And it's centrally located, so it has the role of intercepting some of the shopping trips that might otherwise be going out to Adams Crossing or coming down to Weimar. In this case, that's going to happen to a lesser effect because we're pretty near the edge. We're also just a stone's throw from the shopping center on Weimar and not very far from the shopping center at Walnut Street. There's a non-conforming gasoline sales convenience grocery right on this corner. So for various reasons, we think that if we do go forward with this and accept the traffic premises for the residential intensity, we would like to delete the commercial. Okay, that explains that condition. The second condition is that the open space in the quarry impact area and the floodplain should be credited to the open space requirements for the entire project. This is something we talked about when we were doing our zoning ordinance and our growth policies plan. The staff has always held to this philosophy as a good means of preserving some of these large environmentally sensitive open spaces. But what that means specifically is that if someone comes in with a phase here, we don't have to insist that there be open space within that phase, that the requirements of the code with respect to the entire project can be met at least in part by these open spaces which are shown in the plan. Number 3, we need an agreement on the phasing of the PUD relative to the street improvements and the developer's willingness to implement the improvements if necessary prior to construction. That needs to be drafted to staff satisfaction before we forward the case to the council, and it needs to be recordable so that it runs with the property and serves as warning to potential successors in ownership. Number 4, the detention shall be provided or not provided at the discretion of the approving authority for final plans. And again, we note that depending on 2-mile fringe transitions, that could be the county. We don't have to talk about the detention in Plan A, fortunately, but there is a pond shown on Plan B in this area, kind of low in the area of flow from the plan, and this could serve as detention. From the detention area, it goes directly into the creek and directly south to Clear Creek. Now, when you're this low in the watershed, a good argument can be made that detention is not necessary, and quite probably the figures are going to show that. What it amounts to is the crest of water that's moving down the floodplain during a flood event is built up from the smaller crests from all parts of the watershed. And if this area's crest can be somewhere downstream by the time the main crest, which is the aggregate of all the sub-areas of the watershed, comes through here, actually the crest will be lower, there will be less intense flooding. Whereas if we hold this so that it's trickling out right when that crest passes through this area, it might be adverse. Now, that's pretty sound reasoning, and there are times when that can be demonstrated. However, that is something that's still hanging, so the condition of approval simply says that detention will be provided at the discretion of the approving authority. We want it clearly understood that it's not to be a numbers game, that the calculations will prove it. They'll certainly influence the approving authority, but we need to retain the discretion to require that detention if we see fit. The land use list for the business park, Area I, Plan B, should be modified per the marked up version that we put in your packet. Now, in the preliminary submittal, the list was pretty raw. It included such uses as light manufacturing and distribution facilities limited to 1,500 square feet. And that's a pretty broad category, but for the size limit. It included limited commercial. And if we're going to take out 6 acres of shopping and then allow a broad category like limited commercial on a larger office park site, we're not achieving anything, so we need to delete that. Community center has a definition in our code. We should go by the definition, which is a community serving not-for-profit activity center, essentially. If we're going to call it, if this is going to be a business park, we think that we need to have some additions to the list, and that would be business and corporate offices other than outpatient health care. We took outpatient health care out because, again, we don't want to have shopping center aspects, and they're fairly high trip generation characteristics compared to some other types of offices. Business services such as printing and packaging, but excluding retail and auto services. Nursing home, daycare, funeral home, schools, including trade and business. We thought those things would be good additions to the list of business park uses. We've discussed these with the petitioner, and they, I believe, are in agreement with these staff suggestions. The number 6 is just a qualifier. The petitioner's plan, while schematic, shall be construed as suggestive of the type of layout contemplated for the multifamily areas. Petitioner's reference to standard exterior finishes and the 3-story height reference should be clarified. We'd like a little verbal talk on the record of what exactly they mean by that. As you know, the outline plan serves as the foundation and the criteria for the approval of the final plan, and I think we need to have a little more than what they've stated and on the record to serve as a basis for those future decisions. Number 7, site details and specific engineering for final plans shall not be limited by the schematic preliminary plan. Specific locations and designs of street, open space, drainage, pedestrian, and other facilities are subject to final plan approval. I think that's a two-way thing that protects both the developer and us. If we see a final plan that doesn't look very much like this subdivision layout, and we perceive a need for some tree preservation or a sidewalk pedestrian link between 2 blocks or something like that, we don't want to get in a situation where the developer says, but it wasn't on my outline plan. Similarly, the developer doesn't want to be told that he has to do this exactly this way if he comes up with a better idea for final plan. So these are schematic. And finally, number 8, the representation of the bike trail and sewer main on plans is construed as the petitioner's proposal to dedicate easement or right-of-way and establish the trail. The trail we're talking about is this dotted line on the plan. And I believe the location of that's somewhat schematic. What's going on there is the City Utilities Department is in the process of acquiring easement or right-of-way for a major interceptor sewer that'll relieve the tower, the lift station at the corner of Tapp and Weimer, and allow gravity flow down the East Fork to the treatment plant. As part of that, they're going to be acquiring the rights for pedestrian and bicycle access over that easement or right-of-way. So it'll be, they'll accomplish 2 things, the sewer easement and the pedestrian and bike path facility. At the same time, the city is pursuing a grant to build the pedestrian and bike path facility. It'll actually be a pretty nice opportunity because this west branch will go on down to Clear Creek, and then there'll be an east branch up the east fork of Jackson Creek to the tower lift station at Sherwood Oaks. So between the two of them, they'll provide a relatively continuous rural bicycle and pedestrian loop through some pretty countryside. So it's our understanding, and this has been confirmed by the developer since we wrote the staff report, that if it's shown on the plan, he's saying he's proposing it. So we expect the dedication of the easement and right-of-way for both the sewer and the trail from the developer as part of his plan proposal. We don't expect him to build the bike trail to the specifications that the city contemplates in its grant. It's going to be, we don't know whether it's going to be done or not. The plan that they're seeking the grant for is a fairly elaborate one, so what we would like to recommend here is that this developer simply be responsible for making the dedication of the right-of-way and establishing a trail. We can look at the details of that when we work on the final plans, but we don't think it would be appropriate to commit him at this time to the design that the city has in its grant application, because if we don't get the grant, it probably won't happen, and it wouldn't serve us.
Just for what's on his ground?
No, the grant is for the whole thing.
I mean, this piece here, I mean, only a third of that is on a piece of property that the developer has a petition before us.
Up here.
Right.
That's the only part that's
Okay.
on his property. So this is all he's obligated to dedicate, of course. That's what's on his property. So that sums up our conditions of approval. As the discussion takes place, we may think of some others that come out of concerns that the commission expressed. So any questions for staff?
Questions for staff? Yes, Lorraine?
Wouldn't it be better to remove hotel motel from the business park uses? Because I can see some problems with that kind of use in this area.
Yeah, I suspect that's one we might ask the petitioner to comment on now that you mention it. It's not in a very visible spot, and looking ahead to I-69 standards on the bypass, there's a serious risk that Tap Road would lose its interchange. There would be a bridge across the bypass, but not an interchange, and Fullerton would probably lose any contact, barricades. So a motel in this location, first of all, would be not likely to select this place, and secondly, if they did, could be facing a bleak future. So we might want to consider that one.
Jim, are the improvements, as they know at this time, the Tap Road would be still 2-lane, but widened with turn lanes, left turn lanes, and I realize it may change, over the next 5 years or
Right,
10 years.
that's what we envision. We foresee 4 lanes with additional turn lanes in the vicinity of the intensive non-residential development over in the vicinity of Weimer. As you know, from Weimer west to the bypass, there's a light industrial park approved on the north side of the street and additional vacant industrial land and business park land on the south side of the street. Then we have the shopping center at Weimer and Tap on the northeast quadrant of that intersection. So we foresee a 4-lane facility in that location. But from there on, it should be a 2-lane facility with widely spaced intersections and turn lanes at the intersections. And it'll be, as we envision it, 3 lanes, each leg at the Rockport Tap intersection. But there'll be a lot of complications. What the county envisions doing is probably acquiring some right-of-way and moving the actual corner further away from the crest. So it'll be a fairly expensive piece of work.
Any other questions for staff? If they did that intersection, though, I mean, why would they want to move that? Wouldn't it be simpler just to cut the hill down than?
That would be the other alternative.
Okay. Joe?
Tim, the county engineer, I take it, wrote a letter on the 23rd of October that we have in our file.
And that was one day before the petitioner submitted the letter indicating their willingness to commit to providing the improvements on a staged basis. Have we had any further contact with the county people about whether that satisfies what in their letter they expressed to be reluctance to give any support to this plan?
No, we didn't talk about that to them afterwards, but basically the petitioner's reluctance to take any responsibility for these improvements was the basis of our shared opposition earlier. So without further discussion, based on our previous discussions, I assume that the letter cured the objection.
Okay, and you're comfortable that they would go along with a plan like this so long as the petitioner was on the hook, so to speak, for the improvements?
Yes.
Any contact with the school corporation about the presence of so many homes? We have brought this up before, and we did insist that on the Sudbury project, the school people be brought into the discussion. They decided that that was not something that they necessarily had a long-term interest in, although my recollection is that we left open the possibility that they could acquire ground on the Sudbury project. But this, I think, is even more homes, if I'm not mistaken, than we approved at Sudbury, and is much more, I'm trying to think how this relates to Tamaron, where the petitioner was asked to contribute some land to serve the demand created by the build-out of their subdivision.
The Tamaron thing, the issue was questioned, and the petitioner immediately volunteered
That's right.
the acreage as long as he didn't lose units.
No, I understand that, and I'm not suggesting necessarily anything more than that here, but has the discussion even taken place here?
No, we have not had a discussion like that. They of course, are on the distribution list and review the packets, and they know that the case is before us, but we have not gone to the school corporation and said, would you like to bargain for some school opportunity in this area?
Am I right that this is significantly more units total than the Tamaron or the Sudbury project?
Yes, Tamaron was in the 300s, Sudbury 800s, I believe.
I'm sorry?
I think Sudbury was in the 800s.
800s, yeah. Let me do one more quick one, and then I'll get to the long one. Is this a case where it would be appropriate to say that the final plan could come back to the Plan Commission for approval, given the magnitude and the fact that we're dealing with some rather fuzzy concepts in some places in the plan? Obviously, it may not be us if the 2-mile fringe issue goes back to the county, but in the interim, that's not something that's addressed in the conditions, but I would think it would be appropriate.
It would be appropriate.
Okay. The final question is, I want to ask you about the shopping center. I understand that county is opposed to it and that you're in agreement with the county, but I guess I need a little more of an explanation of why you're opposed to it, because as I look at the situation, if you don't allow it to go in, then you're basically saying that all 1,152 dwelling units are going to have to access Tap Road to get a gallon of milk or a newspaper or anything else. Every single person who lives in this subdivision is going to have to come out to Tap Road and either go left to Weimer or right to South Walnut, or across it, I suppose, but still through the intersection and up into somebody else's neighborhood on the Sudbury project, which is also probably a considerable distance, and in fact even further away than the Weimer Road site. So odds are good people go on to Weimer. But in any event, I mean, they have to go to one of those 3 places, which means they have to fight their way across or onto Tap Road if there isn't something here. Wouldn't the better alternative be to put some kind of convenience level, and I really mean truly convenience level, in the development so that people would not have to go outside, if you can prevent others from coming in?
Can't quarrel with that, Joe. I think if we think about what 6 acres of commercial, I'd have to reference their submittal, but they're probably talking 30 or 50,000 square feet of cumulative area.
Right.
That's way beyond convenience level.
Agreed completely, and I'm not disagreeing with the notion that we don't want anything like what's going in behind Arby's or something like that on the east side. But the idea of having no commercial in the site means literally every car's got to get onto Tap Road to get a gallon of milk, and that just seems to me that we ought to try to avoid that scenario too.
Okay. Well, I think staff's response is put that way, reduced to the convenience scale with some appropriate limitations on acreage and store size, and maybe even requiring that there be, as phase 1, a convenience grocery anchor.
Right. I'd be very specific about the uses. Gas station, convenience grocery store, video store. I mean, the typical things people just go out to I'm sorry?
Go ahead, I'm just adding to it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't, we can think of those over the next, half hour or whatever, but Okay, thanks.
Tom?
Tim, your number 3 here where we talk about phasing, you talk about street conditions. Who's going to determine phasing and at what level?
Well, the petitioner has a specific schedule that identifies what pieces of the development would go forward.
All right, he's got them all labeled, I understand that. But just because they're labeled doesn't necessarily mean they're going to start with Plan A and develop that first. But when we talk about phasing and road capacities, there's got to be some understanding as to what those numbers mean. And who's going to determine that?
Well, if the final plans come to the commission would be able to monitor the degree to which those conditions are being met on each of the phases. But I think it's fairly definitive. I think they're saying, you know, this will be developed only after this improvement is in place, and this will be developed only after this improvement is in place. So I don't think it's numerical in nature. I think it's fairly site-specific. Now, I'm going to leave it to them to run through that. It's a very complex thing, and I debated trying to give you some materials in your packet that would make it more clear, but I think the whole thing's best served if we let one person give you the thorough presentation at the meeting tonight with the graphics.
Okay, I'll wait.
Any other questions for staff? Yes, Lorraine?
Isn't it true, Tim, that if you did allow commercial, even at a convenience level, that the majority of the people are going to go ahead and drive to the larger shopping areas because of the cost?
Well, statistically, people are making more shopping trips than they used to. I read something recently to the effect that the average household's making 3 per week. And I think that indicates that in addition to the big, let's load up the cart and spend $70 kind of trip, they're making other smaller trips for miscellaneous things. So there is probably some good sound reasoning to the idea that if we can provide convenience level shopping for those smaller trips, some of them might not have to go out to Taft Road. I think we need to be a little cautious with it, though, with the size and scale of the sender, and remember that some of these things can be pretty big trip generators.
But isn't it true that if you want to save money, you're not going to stay in that little area where the price would probably be higher than if you just went a few miles over to Walmart or someplace like that?
That's right.
Which is very close in proximity to this development.
Any other questions for staff? Thank you. Mary Ellen, the Environmental Commission report, please.
Okay, I've done some editing in light of the new information that we've all received tonight. Okay, we have 5 issues, and we took out one of them that's in the report. The first one is drainage, quarry reclamation, floodplain development, wetlands, and tree preservation. And this is a schematic. It's certainly not exact. I just wanted to spend a minute about drainage since it was such a concern at the last meeting, but I'm just going to mention it and move on. In Site Plan B, there's one main drainage divide that runs through the center of the property that divides on the northwest part of the site. The drainage goes right towards Clear Creek there, and down here on the southeast portion of the site, it goes southward towards an intermittent stream here and then hooks up with Clear Creek and then goes south. Tim had already covered the concerns regarding the stormwater, whether there's going to be stormwater detention on this site or direct conveyance to Clear Creek. So we just reiterate that the recommendation that the final plan be contingent upon approval of, from the engineering department of the drainage plan. I just want to mention that the petitioner has been meeting with engineering on this, and they've been working and trying to solve and come up with a good drainage plan for this site. The second issue is quarry reclamation. I want to mention again that we feel that the quarry reclamation is a good idea, and we support the petitioner's plan to try to reclaim this quarry. It will not only improve the environmental conditions of the area, it will also improve the aesthetics and improve the overall safety of the site. We do have a concern regarding the filling operations, namely the source and the need for the large amount of fill to reclaim this site, to reclaim the quarry. And the petitioner has stated that the source for all the fill will be from within the site, and that the final process, i.e. the plan for how the quarry ponds and holes are going to be refilled and how the boulders are going to be moved will be more defined in the final stage or the final plan. So we recommend for the quarry reclamation that the plan be submitted for review at the final plan stage. The third issue is floodplain development, and the site contains the floodplain's right over here on the western portion of the site, and the petitioner has in the original plan for site plan B and NA, they were going to develop a 3-par golf course over in the floodplain. As Tim mentioned, they have withdrawn that plan, and they're going to dedicate it to green space, and we're in support of that plan. Another issue is wetlands, and I just put some dots here. Those are certainly not exact. They're pretty small because actually the wetlands that are indicated on or identified in the National Wetlands Inventory map, they identify 6 wetlands, potential wetlands in this northwest part of the site. And these, I just want to take a minute, the wetlands that are identified on the National Wetlands Inventory map are identified using aerial photography, and they require further delineation on the ground by a wetland specialist. So the petitioner in our ordinance requires a review and assessment of any potential wetlands on a site, and the petitioner is currently performing, they have secured a wetland specialist, and they are currently performing delineation. There is, the petitioner has drawn to my attention, in our meetings, I do have in our report, it was our understanding in the meetings that the wetlands, if there were any wetlands delineated on this site, that the wetlands would not be disturbed. And that's what I have written in my report. The petitioner called to my attention that that is not the case, that they, if there are any wetlands are delineated, that they will be mitigated.
Wait a minute. Yeah, it's the same banister.
John?
My Bannister. He said he'd never been in my house before. Home sweet home. Malcolm, I felt faint. Well, I mean, I was walking in the woods and, well, I knocked, and what I needed was some water, so I just, forgive me, I should have waited outdoors.
My house is your house, Rachel. Did you find it?
What?
What you were looking for. The glass of water.
Yes, sure. Oh, I drank right out of your tap, Malcolm. I was pretty shaky, so I just didn't bother with the glass. I should be going. Hi, John.
Afternoon, Mrs. Yeoman. Rachel was feeling ill, so she dropped in for a glass of water. Are you feeling better now?
Fine. Just fine now.
You do look a bit pale, ma'am. Could I take you home?
No, thanks, John, because I feel just fine.
Take care.
Thanks again. Bye.
Bye.
Rachel, get a hold of yourself. Malcolm Bryce is not a killer. The man lied. He lied, that's all. Everybody, sometimes. Would you shut up? Get home, will you? And stop talking to yourself.
Your nice Miss Yeoman's looking for trouble. You like that Miss Yeoman, don't you?
She's all right.
She reminds you of somebody, doesn't she? The way she holds her head up to the wind. Who does she remind you of, Johnny?
I don't know.
The way she can smile and lie at the same time. I felt faint.
Maybe she was telling the truth.
She's just like your mother. Foolhardy. They look like pretty little things, but inside, there's wickedness. Your mother was the same way. She pretended to like it here, but we had our best moments at the house out on the lake. And she liked it. Oh, yes, she did. Refuses to leave now. Simply refuses. She's learned to love it down there by the lake. And she's changed her ways. She's a sweet, loving little wife now. And you couldn't ask for a better mother. Could you think of a better mama, Johnny? Isn't my fault. She won't chat with you. It's guilt, boy. She recalls that night.
Dad?
She recalls that night she tried to abandon you. You remember that night, Johnny? You watched her tiptoe out the door with moonlight in her hair. Pa! Pa! You cried. Come quick! Mama's running away! Well, didn't I stop her for you?
Yes, sir?
You were right there.
I remember, sir.
And you helped me carry her back. Oh, come on, take her feet, son. And you... How old were you, Johnny?
8. 8 years old, sir.
8 years old. And you helped me, didn't you, Johnny?
Yes, sir. I helped.
You held those little red shoes tight to your chest.
It was all for you, Johnny. I did it for you.
I know that, sir. I know.
Whose blood runs stronger in your veins, son? Mine or poor little Martha's?
Yours. I belong to you, sir.
How are you going to prove that, Johnny? Look at me, son. Who's going to carry on for me after I pass away?
I will.
Keep the home fires burning.
Huh?
All by your lonesome.
I can do it.
No time like the present, is there?
By myself.
All by your lonesome.
Kill Rachel.
Got to kill her. All by his lonesome. All by his lonesome. All by his lonesome.
Yellow van. Service Masters at Alice's again. Ooh, give me those.
Trained Service Master technicians get out, ground in dirt and spots.
A giant spot. So much for the perfect house. Where? I don't see anything.
Now when you call 1-800-WE-SERVE, you'll get this handy cleaning tips guide free.
Get your furniture, carpeting, and draperies deep down clean. Guaranteed.
Get down.
I'm Dave Clark. I'm a big eater. Now tell the court where you were for lunch Tuesday. I was eating a Wendy's Big Bacon Classic combo. You know, quarter pound of fresh beef, 3 strips of bacon, cheese, toppings, biggie fries, and a drink.
Sounds like a big meal. Did you finish it?
Every bite.
Really?
Well.
Liar!
Liar!
The court.
Isn't it true it was too big for you? It was too big!
Get off the stand.
Wendy's Big Bacon Classic Combo is only for big eaters.
It was too big!
Don't let this happen to you.
Why pour, measure, lug, splash, and push to clean your hardwood floors when there's new Mop and Glow Hardwood Floor Cleaner? Just squirt and mop. No dulling residue, no rinsing. It couldn't be easier. New Mop and Glow Hardwood Floor Cleaner. One step away from clean.
Leg Smooth Silhouette's pantyhose. Slim and smooth every crucial inch between your tummy and your toes. Smooth silhouettes from Legs. Nothing beats a great pair of legs.
At Riders Jeans and Casual Clothes, we studied hundreds, thousands of regular folks to learn their shapes and sizes. And then designed jeans that give them a great-looking fit. You'll find it's like we knew your size exactly, somehow. Riders Jeans, cut to make real people look real good.
So MCI's friends and family comes to me and says, we have really big news. I said, great, let me tell it. They said, well, we got something a little bigger in mind.
Friends and family, wow, automatic savings, every call, even bigger savings for one and all. Don't need names, don't need lists, savings automatic, get the gist.
Look, the whole naming thing, you don't need it. You get friends and family, you get savings. Simple. Friends and family.
Ruth Patchett is steamed up because her husband is having an affair.
This is your new home. I'm sure you'll be very happy here.
Someone get this deranged woman out of here.
Now, she's not getting even.
Seems like if you're a woman, there's just no justice in the world.
Justice serves those who serve themselves.
She's getting mad.
Sabotage, I have a warrant for your arrest. For what? For fraud and embezzlement.
Meryl Streep, Roseanne Arnold, She-Devil.
Today at 6 p.m.
Waltham, the world's leading authority on pet care and nutrition, presents...
There's a place in the heart reserved for the true companion of body and soul.
Hi, I'm Cindy Williams.
And I'm Bill Hudson, and this is Choo Choo.
Like a lot of you, our pets are part of our family. So besides love and affection, we know how important it is to give them good, nutritious food.
And that's why we use Waltham Formula Diet.
Let your dog or cat try one of the Waltham Formula Diets. Compare it to the food they're already eating and see which one they prefer.
Call the toll-free number now for a valuable $4 coupon good towards your purchase of Waltham Formula. Through this special television offer, your pet can try Waltham Formula for as little as $1 a week. And remember, Waltham Formula comes with a money-back guarantee and is available only in pet stores and vet clinics. Call the number on your screen now. Waltham Formula, endorsed by vets, approved by pets.
Now back to Hallow Weekend on Lifetime.
John, you think it too.
I have to do something for my father.
I know. It'll be all right.
I have to. He said it. Forgive me.
Oh, my poor. You must forgive him. But it's not your fault. Listen, you are not to blame.
Then you're not mad at me?
Oh, you poor child.
Mama. My mama.
It's okay, it's okay.
Have a nice walk?
I tried.
Not hard enough.
She kept...
Wrapping you around her little finger?
Yeah. Yeah, it was her. It was her fault.
Well, she kept looking at you with woman's eyes, huh?
Uh-huh. And holding on to me.
Rocked you in her arms, did she?
Yeah. She tricked me.
I think you liked it.
No.
Yep. You was easy on her.
No.
Then why don't I smell her blood on you?
I don't know.
Why don't I smell it here? I don't know. What I smell is failure. Yep. I raised myself a son who doesn't have the guts to kill himself one itty-bitty woman all by himself. Yes, sir. I got me a weakling.
I'm as good as you. Maybe better.
Is that a fact?
Yeah. One's nothing. One's not good enough. Anybody could kill just one.
You got an idea, son? Where are you going? Come on, you can tell me. No need to be shy.
It's time. I got a better idea. Not just Rachel.
You're talking about killing? Martha. God bless her. For Mama.
We'll kill them all.